Smart people with AI most likely be smarter than smart people without AI. But, dumb people with AI who use it mindlessly, like with slop, was it very unethical to say that? I'm sorry.
Hello and welcome back to another exclusive Boom Room interview. This is Sasha with Arcanum Ventures. I'm here with my good friend and colleague, Carmelo. And today we have the pleasure of welcoming Anna Mikeda, the lead AI psychology engineer at Glass Umbrella and formerly AI psychology designer at SophiaVerse and SingularityNet. Anna, it's a pleasure to speak with you as always. How are you?
Hi. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling very excited about the topic of today's meeting.
I'm really excited too. Mello and I, we're going to talk a lot about AI and the cross-section specifically with psychology and maybe unpackage a lot of trends that we're seeing. Maybe many people are seeing across social media, across marketing and many other aspects that include AI nowadays. But before we do any of that and get into it, I want to kind of talk a little bit more about you for our audience members. And this is a question that we ask everybody that comes on the Boom Room podcast. So tell us a little bit, who is Anna? How did you get interested into the world of AI, psychology, and even the cross-section in your past experience around cryptocurrency? And how did you come to be here today speaking with us on behalf of yourself and Glass Umbrella?
Okay, it'll be quite a journey. So my undergrad is in social anthropology. People usually don't know what it is. It's a study about different people, different societies, and how they compare around the world. And I went to study that because I really wanted to understand does it mean to be human? As I was studying it, I realized that actually it doesn't give me the answers. I need to go deeper. So I went to study psychology. And I thought in psychology I found the answers. And for many years, I worked as a practicing psychologist. My specific focus was anxiety because, psychologists always choose the focus that worries them first and foremost. And so anxiety was my thing. And so I was working, I kind of managed to overcome it in myself, and I wanted to share this with others. And especially I was interested in working with founders, entrepreneurs, people who have very, very high stakes, high velocity of thinking, of events, spheres like crypto, like tech, startups. So for a long time, that was my focus. And at some point, I went to an event that was called Breakfast with a Robot, where some of the people from SophiaVerse, my future company, were present, and they, demonstrated a robot, and I could talk with it, and I asked some questions. And after the talk, I came up and I was like, "This is amazing, guys! I want to work for you." And this is kind of how it started. So I started working for the game SophiaVerse, designing AI personalities, and then moved to a similar work at Glass Umbrella, where now I help design educational agents. So, and I think we will touch on it much more today, but the question is how to make AI improve your mind rather than kind of decrease your abilities, which is what studies show is happening right now. So, and also I'm very, very interested in, in the questions of what I call robopsychology. It is it is taken from Isaac Asimov. I was very inspired by his book. And it is for me a study of both how humans relate to AI. So what kind of qualities we need to develop in ourselves to be able to relate to AI well. But also on the psychology of AI side, like understanding the mind of the machine, understanding what is happening inside of them, and like what kind of motivation they have, how this motivation can be changed, what kind of rights they should have. So all of that. So essentially, I work in building educational agents. I work in research, kind of developing the sphere of robopsychology, and I work in consulting for companies who want to become more AI native. So this is what I do.
That's incredible. I think that covers on a lot of different things that we want to dive into. There are so many different ways that we want to take this discussion. But first, before we dive deeper, I want to maybe give you an opportunity to explain to our audience a little more about your current work and your current focus with Glass Umbrella. So I understand that this company is focused on positive outcomes around the use of AI and technologies, AI adoption strategies, multimedia infrastructure, and even nonprofit initiatives. So give us a little bit more idea of like what's your day-to-day looking like and what kind of challenges do you usually face in what you're doing under Glass Umbrella?
So Glass Umbrella is an amazing company, very, very, not big, but very, very closely integrated, like everyone kind of feels like a family. Very AI native. So, we really do use Claude Code on daily work, and it is very much, the philosophy of learning how to use anything quickly with the help of AI. So kind of upscaling your skills constantly. And right now we are developing educational game for kids, 8 to 12, where, they obviously have this amazing, narrative story, like music, adventures, magical world, but also inside of all of that, there is a huge educational element. So literacy, math, music, and all of that is integrated in kind of game environment so that, kids are engaged, and to help them develop the qualities of grit, like being able to kind of to work, with enjoyment, to start learning to enjoy studying and working and creating things. So this is what we're working on. So one part of it is just designing the game, and like the back end of this educational agents is quite sophisticated. It includes knowledge graphs that are constantly updated based on what the child has learned, his like motivations, his difficulties. This is one part. And the second part, it is about consulting. Because we went through this path of using AI and really becoming, creating AI co-workers for ourselves. So now we consult other companies that are only curious, AI curious, to see how they can work with that, how they can build themselves their AI co-workers.
And has that been a big part of what you do so far? Because I've been seeing a lot of companies saying they want to integrate an AI, but they have no idea how to do it. So like, there's obviously tremendous room for people that do know how to do it to create a massive business, basically setting that up for other companies. Like just about every company can benefit from this, just like every company could benefit from having a website.
Yeah, I think that this AI native integration, it should be done very smartly, because obviously, the simple thing, like just kind of, download Claude Code and just tell it what to do. But it really isn't that straightforward. On one hand, you need to understand very well the limitations of current AI, what it can and cannot do. Secondly, it is very, very important to maintain your agency in all of that, because it's easy to outsource. It's cheap and it's fast. But the cost is not only technical debt, which, definitely occurs, but it also is something that, I call cognitive debt. Well, there was a famous paper about it by MIT that talked about when, students writing papers without ChatGPT and with ChatGPT, like they ask them like 2 weeks later, what was your essay about? People who wrote with ChatGPT did not remember. They're like, it was about something, So the way, like what happens is that, you need to use AI smartly technically, but also cognitively. And so those two elements, I think, are very important.
Yeah, it's a lot like the astronauts when they go up into space and they don't use their muscles because there's no gravity. When they come back to Earth, they need to work out their muscles
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
I think the same thing is happening, and I wanted to ask, like, what are some of the? This is like an awesome first place to start, but like, what are some things you can do to safeguard yourself from that personally? Not even as a company, but personally, how do you avoid that cognitive debt, and how do you use LLMs, let's say, like more correctly?
Well, there are two things that I would say here. First thing is, ideally, our AI providers, so ChatGPT, OpenAI, etc., they can they can change the design a little bit, so to maximize not quick answers, like 1 second answer, there you have your paper, but to maximize co-thinking and co-creation. So this is more like design elements, not my specific focus. My specific focus is, okay, we as humans, what can we do? So a very, very good place to start is at metacognition. So there are some questions that you can keep asking yourself as you prompt, as you ask AI to do your bidding, that will help you stay very sharp and very kind of attuned, not even attuned, to make sure that the end result is yours, to remain agency, because very often the end result is much more ChatGPT or Claude than it is yours. So there are some like metacognitive questions to ask. And actually, I've written a recent paper about it, and it's like a simpler version of this paper is on my Substack. But it is about how our metacognitive capacities, so ability to think about thinking, is not degrading universally across all the capacities, but it is very selective. So, for example, we become very good at prompt engineering, at thinking like, okay, how do I change this prompt to get what I need? So this is good, helping us get more, sharper. But there are also things that will actually decrease our metacognitive capacity. For example, we rarely integrate what we have learned for later. So we rarely ask, how do I take this piece of information and encode it in my own brain? Or from this specific interaction with AI, what have I learned about using AI? Like, what are the nuance of using it? So integration, metacognitive integration is often missing. Another example would be, this is actually, I quite like this. So people feel very creative using AI. Yeah, like, I know I do. And, but the paradox here is that on average, our work is becoming less creative. So it tends to converge on similar outputs. So even though, when I write something, it feels like, this is actually pretty good, like, post. But when you do this, when you're like comparing this to other posts, you're like, oh. Actually, something funny happened. This was quite some time ago, but I wanted to write like, a story with the help of Claude. And I did. I was pretty happy with the outcome. I was like, yeah, this is cool. And then a couple of weeks later, I was reading a similar kind of, short story written by a friend, and I realized that the names of characters are the same. And it was one of those like meme moments when you're just like, oh, let's pretend it didn't happen. And after that, I became much more careful about changing, the outcomes. So my point is that even though we feel creative individually, as a whole, like especially Western society, starts to converge. So it is very, very important for us to keep this originality, uniqueness to be able to evaluate our work on this.
I feel like there's not a lot of that happening. That's such an interesting point. It's like your copyright infringement is infringing on my copyright infringement. You're seeing so much of that, but it's strange because we are living in this attention economy, right? And a lot of content out there from people that are supposed AI entrepreneurs and AI evangelists, they're constantly seeking shortcuts to desired outcomes. And we see that a lot manifest in content that we see. There's a lot of people that become like these AI experts on LinkedIn that talk about like use these 10 prompts to be an expert marketer or whatever. And they're all looking for these easy ways to get these positive outcomes. And it is killing creativity. And it's turned into a skimming culture where people are just like kind of skimming through this output and saying, yeah, I'm good with that. In your own personal experience in consulting with these companies and guiding them, do you feel like a lot of that's lost? Like they don't want to spend time on the creativity or the customization and realize that they're losing themselves in this journey of like moving forward in work? Is there a lot of pushback that you see there, or simply like, is it a issue of failed education or failed adoption?
Oh, you mean like founders and other people using AI to create like quick solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you're consulting with them and teaching them, this is a great way of using these tools. You have to bring a little bit more awareness into it to get the outcome that's best suited for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we do live, as you said, in the attention economy, and everyone is trying to save time, and there's so much information available everywhere that it is, overwhelming. So it is understandable why not just founders, everybody wants to save time and, just be like, ChatGPT, give me this, the prompt. I have to say, I find quite a lot of, pages that are like how to, earn lots of money with ChatGPT using this 10 prompts. I find this to be so, annoying and kind of disrespectful towards human creativity, because it also assumes that people who will be like very low standard, quality standard of people who will be, recipients of this, whatever marketing campaign was happening. So for me, like we always try to highlight that, that it's your originality, your voice, your values that will really be carrying forward, beyond all the typical AI phrases. Like that's what shapes it. And there is a very, very simple kind of life hack about it. It's something that definitely anyone can implement. So whenever you give AI a question, it gives you the first answer. And you should never accept it, the first answer, even like with little like modifications. But you should really just consider taking it in slightly different or much different direction. Because this first output is exactly, the pattern, the typical pattern. It's exactly the token and prediction system that will give your output that is so similar to everybody else's output. So like the first simple step is to shift it and be like, no, let's turn to this angle, or, push it back a little bit. And then it starts giving more your voice. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. That's very good, actionable advice, in fact. And it makes sense based on how these LLMs work, because if you're shifting the direction a little bit, it'll use the previous output as a foundation to build off of, but sort of like narrow focus a little bit. So I think that's something that our listeners can very, very easily grasp. So thank you for that.
Yeah, for sure. And on that note, like I think one question I've been dying to ask anybody that knows anything about AI is obviously everybody's throwing around terms about AGI, and LLMs are something that we are familiar with, but a lot of people, they throw this umbrella term of AI over everything. But could you give us in your words, like what actual AI is today? What is the difference between LLM and this sought after AGI and everything in between, basically?
Yes, it's a very, very big debate.
Here we
One of my
go.
favorite topics. So everyone is very hyped about LLMs these days. For the past couple of years, and a lot of money is going into it. And the more money goes into it, the more important it becomes. And so the way LLMs are structured, they are essentially token prediction, next token prediction, which is like finding patterns and repeating those patterns over and over. And this is a very important part of our human understanding and intelligence. We also, notice patterns. But what's kind of special about us is that we can kind of extrapolate new patterns. We can use our induction, deduction, intuition, whatever that is, to find new patterns, to make novel predictions, essentially to be creative. And right now, LLMs, well, some people think they can do it. There are many benchmarks that show that on truly novel tasks, LLMs are not very good. The idea was that scaling, just putting like more and more data centers, more and more compute, will improve their intelligence. And this is the theory that has been, kind of the strongest within, OpenAI and other big tech companies. It does seem that LLMs are reaching their ceiling because, at first they were growing like this and now they're growing like this. So we do expect them to reach a plateau. They're still amazing, there's still many mysteries around them. And we can talk about their mysteries a little bit, but this is still just, pattern matching, like based on data sets. If they didn't have the data sets, like all the previous human knowledge, which actually is also, some of the quality of that knowledge is very dubious, like all the internet information. Sometimes I joke that, future AI will come to robo-psychologists and be like, okay, I need some therapy about what my parents taught me in the very, very beginning, all of those, Reddit posts, etc. So LLMs are amazing, wonderful, and we do use them a lot. They're very, very helpful when you have this idea, like the spark. They help flesh it out. They save time. They help you brainstorm. But true intelligence, it is something else. It is ability to come up with kind of new structures and creating new patterns. And essentially being able to navigate in the situations we've never seen before. So something that is not in the data set. And since the world is constantly surprising and just unpredictable by its nature, like that's what we want actual intelligence to be able to do.
Right.
So, and that is why it is called artificial general intelligence, because it will be able to, generalize. And for example, I really like the work that SingularityNet is doing, and specifically Ben Goertzel. I think it was at the conference in Thailand a couple of years back where we guys actually met in person. And their approach is building neurosymbolic architecture. So neural as as part of like LLMs, neural nets, and symbolic as more old school AI, which was discarded as not smart enough. But this is still very much a research sphere, and ideas that were not popular, can still shoot. And I actually think that this rule-based system, symbolic, can be, the answer, because it creates because the common criticism of them is that they're very brittle and very, just rigid. And because they're rigid, they're brittle, but this might not be the case, depending on how you make rules. And, there could be metacognition rules that can allow you to change your own rules. So I think there's great potential in researching that, for sure. So
yeah, but we're not there yet, at least with these token-based transformer models. And, taking it back to your previous point about how many people are using these models for automation tasks, for research, for creative content output, and maybe we can call it, for lack of a better term, a pandemic around laziness and this skimming culture that I mentioned before. I wanted to ask your take and your specific opinion, coming from the lens of a psychologist that's looking at what's happening here. If we have just this massive influx of people that are using these transformer-based models without putting a lot of awareness into how they're interacting with them, without putting a lot of care and thought into the quality of output, and just looking to get towards an end goal as quickly as possible, then do you feel like everything that is being created and done here is just a product of how these models are set up, and then how these foundational model developers are creating them and training them and structuring them, which is, I guess, getting to a point that we're going to talk about very soon that I think we're all very excited about?
Well, it is partly, by design. The systems are meant to give us quick responses so that we keep engaged, we keep on using them. This is a whole part of the, the economic, business model of those companies. But I also want to kind of take a little bit of responsibility back to humans, because I feel like, when we're talking, for example, about AI slop, it is, unfortunate that there's so much AI slop around us, but it is really not the fault of AI. AI just, produces what is being asked. And, the human laziness, that's the human sloppiness, really. That's the problem. Because, being efficient, producing more, this can really be good for, for science, for industry, for creativity. And yet people take this as like, an easy path, exemplified by take those 10 prompts and earn, $1 million with ChatGPT in a month. Like, it takes the human effort, the grit, the engagement, and also the flow away from humanity. And that can be, it is like junk food, it is like social media, but on a more, actually, like on a deeper level, I think, because it doesn't only work with our attention span. I mean, obviously with that as well. But it rewires our dopamine pathways in a very, in a deeper way. Because because it talks about our culture of work, culture of like producing outputs, culture of being a creative. And I think I do actually want to tell you a little bit about dopamine, because this is very, very interesting.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
So I think we have like three groups of people that use AI. So first group, it's AI sloppers. I call them that. It's like, they just like give me, 10 prompts, like give me like 10 reels, scenarios, 10, whatever, 10 posts on LinkedIn. And they don't even reread it. They just like, out you go. This is one group. And this is actually the majority right now of what I see like on social media. But, you can curate yourself away from those people towards more people who use it, AI, more mindfully. And those are the people that are, that really get into the state of flow with AI. It can be difficult to start a new task, especially if it's difficult. But when you have AI as your helper, you really can get into this flow state very quickly. You write a prompt, it gives you some narrowing questions, it outlines the plan is clearly structured. You start working and like 3 hours pass, you're out of credits, and you're like, wow, this was very, very good. Actually, I hear this a lot with vibe coding, when people are just like, and they go into this world, into the state of flow, essentially, where it's this building. And I think it's very interesting because this does seem like a much, much better way to use it, to use AI. And still there are some problems here. Because the way our interaction is actually rewiring how, we have dopamine. So for example, social media, very, very bad for our dopamine levels. So dopamine is essentially the hormone the neurotransmitter of search and trying to achieve something. So it was given to us so that our ancestors running in the forest would not just sit, at home, content, happy about life, but would actually go and search and look for new places and be like, I wonder if I try this mushroom, what is going to happen? That guy died, but that guy had a lot of fun. This kind of, I'm exaggerating now, but this is essentially the dopamine. It's the search, I want to try new. Let me be creative. Let me try this new approach. Let me use my intelligence. And search usually comes through effort, through grit. We need to work hard to get, what we achieve in the end. And so this is changing with social media. It has already changed because we have this 30-second, 15-second, boost to dopamine. And there's the intermittent rewards when we don't know whether the next reel will be the interesting one, So it's already kind of depleting our baseline levels of dopamine. When we use AI and we get quick answers, just like, it also depletes it because our work becomes it doesn't have any effort in it. It becomes cheap, essentially. So that affects the dopamine. But even when we are in a flow state, that still affects dopamine because, well, first of all, now the click, zing, it worked, comes not so much from doing something as it comes from clear communication. When you can explain what you need to, your AI helper in a way that it does what you need. Firstly. Secondly, there is no more search. At least before we used to use Google. It was like, okay, let's find what are the different articles on this. Now it's like, tell me what is this? So there is no search, we get our answers immediately. And a couple of other things, but to sum up, even when we do have a very kind of flow state, we're very productive with AI, we really do treat it as a work partner, there's still this element of changing our neural pathways. And actually, this is very interesting. This weekend, I decided to take a break from social media because I was just too much, and my brain gets I want silence, I want calmness. But so I was off social media, but I was still using Claude and ChatGPT to kind of discuss some things, to help me structure my ideas. And then after using it, I was like, maybe I should start taking a break from using Claude as well, just to help me remember that actually searching is difficult. It doesn't immediately happen. That achieving something, it still requires my effort. And this kind of brings me to the third group that, well, I hope more and more of us will join. I definitely hope I will join this group. So it's people who can really use AI, well, yes, creatively, yes, in a state of flow, but also really maintain their agency and maintain the desire to still have the hardest work be done by them. So the desire not to outsource. And this is very counterintuitive because, of course, we want to outsource the difficult and the long, of course. So this is kind of be like, no, actually, I enjoy the work. I enjoy making mistakes and improving them. Because actually, like, making mistakes is like one of the best ways to learn. And we tend to hide away from mistakes, just generally, as people do. And so, like, learning to love our mistakes, to love our work, and to really have like dedicated time of just us working, reading a difficult paper, writing a post without AI, analyzing something, just you and your calculator. Like, this can already really improve our cognitive independence, strength, resilience. But this kind of attitude, it requires much more effort. So ideally, it should be scaffolded in some way, or design should help us lean towards it. Because it is not obviously economically advantageous, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So we as users should do it. So, for example, I'm developing this educational agent, like for the company I work for, but also for myself, for like adults, because I read a lot of papers, and I would like to remember at least some main points from them. But for that, there are a lot of insights to learning. So, for example, spaced repetition is very, very important. You can't read something once and remember it. You need to repeat it ideally next day, in 3 days, next week, in 1 month. And then it's long-term memory you can rely on. That's your knowledge. So building also Anki cards, like quick questions about what you've learned this week from different spheres to help you also bring them all together. So there are a lot of different techniques and tools that can help us really use our mind to the fullest. But we still need to build the gentle infrastructure for that.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic. You're absolutely right. Like, we don't retain anything that we get out of ChatGPT or Claude, but I find myself getting annoyed by ChatGPT when it doesn't remember what I've told it, and then I'm frustrated with it, and then I'm like, oh man, I don't even absorb half the stuff that ChatGPT or Claude says. But yeah, I wanted to bring it back to you said before, like in the future, there'll be psychiatric help for some of these AI models, and I imagined, the trauma that Grok might have in XAI on Twitter, because it's literally been trained on slop, it's been trained on bots, it's been trained on the basis form of social media, and I'm fascinated with this feedback loop, not just for the human experience and the users, but actually for the model itself. And do you see anything strange happening there with models recursively, like training off of stuff that's happening in real time? Like, it's training on stuff that's constantly being input into it. So it's training on its own output. It's training on people using it not very creatively, and what the implications of this might be.
Well, so the implications, the very kind of the metaphor that comes to my mind is from the film Cloud Atlas. A really great film. There will be like a little bit of a spoiler now that there's this synthetic being there. I mean, it's kind of like a clone, not a robot, but like some artificially created human. And they drink those strange juices, as part of their like nutrient support. And it turns out that those nutrients are actually them recycled. So older models recycled into this juice, so it feeds them again. I think that this is kind of what's happening with them being like models being trained right now on AI-generated content. It really decreases the output level very, very significantly. It becomes even more predictive, like creativity convergence, even more towards like the dominant lines. And generally, the output is decreasing. This is a real problem because we don't really have much more, data sets to feed into them. So, I mean, there could be potentially, data sets from other cultures, other languages, etc., but it's still limited. So it would seem that this is exactly the point where, like, LLM architecture, transformer architecture has reached its peak, and now like an alternative approach is needed to kind of to deepen that knowledge, to understand the principles behind the pattern matching. So I would say that models being trained on their own produce is decreasing their output. I have to say, I have not noticed it so much so I do not use Grok, so I cannot actually say how its outputs are. I should play with it a little bit because it does seem to be like an interesting one. I've been using mostly Claude because I like its character. I do think like the way they presented the constitution of Claude is like very, very cool. There was like a recent document that came out. And actually, if I may just make like an asterisk about this constitution, so all of it is interesting, etc., etc. People talk about it, but one part was super relevant to my work. In asking Claude to be helpful, they had several guidelines. And those guidelines were essentially metacognitive level about the human. So like, what are his short-term goals, long-term goals? What are his standards? So like, what is his general well-being? So before answering, Claude needs to consider those things. And I think this is very, very important to be mirrored by us humans. Like, we also need to ask ourselves the same exact questions, actually more questions, when we prompt AI, so that this metacognition happens on both sides. So from the AI to understand like the larger context, and from us to understand, okay, what context does AI have? Like, have theory of mind about AI, and build those other like questions to ourselves as we prompt to get better outputs.
It's so interesting. Just realized a point before, going back to dopamine. I've been taking long walks more frequently lately because it stimulates my need for adventure and discovery, walking through the city. And I realize now that I'm probably seeking higher quality hits of dopamine from that to offset all of, my sort of mundane tasks and AI usage. But it sounds like, in general, we're all getting dumber together. Like, the AI models are retraining themselves on this juice, and we're kind of taking shortcuts and using them, and it's all converging towards one point. And it was incredible insight that you offered us around how some of these LLMs might be just recycling this training data and merging towards these points. But on the human side, I want to talk a little bit more from a psychologist perspective, talking maybe around these ideas with brain chemistry and conditioning and training. What do you see happening as far as concerning behavioral shifts for people that are using these models? Because in all three of these camps that you mentioned, the sloppers, the people that are using them a little bit more intuitively, and the people that are bringing in this metacognition methodology, it still seems like in all these cases, using these AI tools are in some way, shape, or form damaging to the human psyche because they're feeding these pathways. So am I wrong in saying that? And if not, how do you see this kind of playing out as time goes to infinity in the current state of things?
As time goes to infinity, you mean after a singularity?
Yeah, supposedly.
Yeah, nobody knows what's going to happen after singularity. We're all going to be very, very surprised. That I'm sure of. But speaking of your question specifically about how it affects us more generally, I think this is actually a very good point, because I do not want to sound like a pessimist using AI and being like, we're all doomed, we're becoming dumber and just like blah. The idea is that AI is a tool. And humans have been using tools, like, that's why we're humans, because we're like, what if I put this, the stick in the stone? Oh, wow, that's fire. So we have been using, tools Like that's what defines us. And so essentially what is happening here as well, it's our like adaptation to new tool. So we are changing, and our neural pathways and neurotransmitter circuits, etc., will change. We do not know yet how. There is no point in being this kind of Amish, like no AI forever for me, because I want to be smart. Because people with AI most likely will be like smart people with AI most likely be smarter than smart people without AI. But dumb people with AI who use it mindlessly, like with slop. Was it very like unethical to say that? I'm sorry.
No, it's great. Let's call out the dumb people.
People who do not put effort into using AI, they are most likely going to be less efficient, productive than people even without AI. So there is going to be this difference. But the main idea is that AI is here to stay, and we might as well learn to use it in the best way. So it does amplify our capacities rather than diminish them. And so there is no need to to kind of try to stick to the previous how we were before, when before AI, before social media, before internet, before books. We are changing, and that's a good thing. We're evolving. We just need to make sure our evolvement is very attuned with our values, with our desire to be explorers, space explorers. Maybe that's the next frontier, so that we maintain our, the level of cognitive sharpness that we've had before.
Absolutely. And, you mentioned before that you're working specifically at Glass Umbrella on products or tools or agents for children to impact education. And if you take this a step further, like this will probably be the first AI native generation that we've seen. Like ours was obviously much more well equipped to deal with the internet and the implications of the internet and social media even than our parents were, or parents. But now this next generation that's going to be going to school and learning. Like I remember when I went to school, I had to learn how to type on a keyboard. They said, this is important. We don't know why yet, but this is important. So do this little typing program and do these little dinosaur programs and stuff. So we did that. And what are you seeing now, like for education and how children are going to be using AI going forward, and how that might positively or negatively impact their psychology or their motivation or the way they use tools?
Yeah, this is a tricky question. So on one hand, it is a positive thing because, kids get their questions answered, their curiosity, which is unending, gets like kind of channeled towards the direction, they want. There's even like a term, I think it's called Claude boys, like people, children who use Claude, to answer all of their questions. And this kind of curiosity, this kind of like, let's go and explore the world, like it is cool. And it is good that, there are chatbots that are of good level, that are, safe, that are promote also, helpfulness, curiosity, well-being in their users. But this is a generation that doesn't know how to search, doesn't know how to play by themselves, I don't know how about you, but my childhood, like especially the early stuff, I still didn't have like, internet. I mean, I did, but it was like the calling, you had to like listen to it. And yeah, you had to play by yourself. You had to make up your own stories. You kind of go into the forest, you have a stick and you're like, okay, this stick is my horse now, and, you make up the whole universe. This is very, very healthy for, brain development. I don't know if this will be the case right now, because it will be very, obviously kids have this, it's with their computer, very, very focused. So the first danger is that people will become more disembodied, because it is all about this interaction. Me and my computer screen. I mean, probably soon we're going to have like glasses or even chip implants, maybe, but right now it's the computers. So first is the embodied aspect. Secondly, it's the search, and ability to be bored. So this is actually very interesting because we do not like boredom, but it is actually when we're bored that our brain does a lot of kind of subconscious work to kind of connect things, to find, okay, what else can I do, etc. So it helps to bring creativity into us. So no more boredom for those kids. Always something to do. So those are some of the main kind of dangers. But I do feel that as we are bringing up those conversations and as we are building educational agents, as we are also educating parents about how to use AI for the benefit of children, how, for example, the AI educational agent shouldn't give answers, but should promote learning, like the child actually getting those answers themselves. I do have hope that there will be larger integration of nature, of social aspect also, because social aspect is very, very important for learning, crucial for learning. And this one-on-one learning with Claude is actually not ideal. We do learn the best in a group setting. Some nuances there, but usually our peers really help us remember, help us kind of get more active, propose ideas. There is the huge element of social interaction. So if I was to advise AI use for kids, which I think I can because I'm working on designing those agents, I would suggest, so definitely the learning scaffolding for helping the child find the answers themselves. So still do the research, still do the work, still do that, it doesn't fit, why, what's the problem? Still have those moments of error and mistake. Secondly would be the social setting. And actually the game we're building, it is a social game, so multiplayer. So it's also important for learning. Social setting. And third is to remember that, outside, nature, rainbows, mountains, and to just remember that the outside world is just always out there, go out, touch the grass. I think that was the meme recently.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of telling that, maybe one of the big takeaways for safety is focusing on moderation to some extent, right? And I want to talk a little bit about your opinion around ethics, responsibility, and accountability. And we can dive into what we're seeing around social media platforms and the prevalence of AI slop a little bit after this. But focusing on these foundational model developers and proprietors, talking about Claude, ChatGPT, etc., it's very clear they're all in some race, and that's you could assign a dollar amount to it because these companies are constantly raising billions of dollars in Series F, G, H, I, J, K, whatever, and they're in competition with each other in this race to be a front runner towards, they say, supposedly AGI, but there's a lot more happening on the economic side of it. But because they're in this race and it is a competitive capitalistic landscape, it doesn't seem like there is a whole lot of incentive to focus on safeguards, moderation, and limitation, and guardrails specifically around different people like children using them. And so I wanted to ask from your perspective, because you might be a little bit more plugged in on that particular topic. Do you see any push from these foundational model developers to implement these safeguards? Do you see any guidance or recommendations coming out from them? Or if not, what do you think needs to happen? What accountability should they take for this?
I do see it happening. Usually it happens as a response to some kind of crime that was committed. Some person was delusional, for example, paranoid, killed somebody, ChatGPT was like, yeah, this person is following you, something like that. It is responsive, and they are building safeguards for therapy, it's very strict with child use as well, actually, and like what is allowed. And some guardrails, they even seem to be a little bit excessive. But I think all major models have it. I think that Claude, Anthropic, has the best guardrails, like the best kind of approach to ethics. But this is just my personal opinion. And so it is there. But as you also correctly said, the capitalist market just makes it so that even though the guardrails will be there, there will always be this pull to how do I increase the amount of time a person spends on my specific, platform. And this is essentially, it means it will be optimizing for simplicity, for ease, for quick answers. What to do about it? I mean, this is the capitalist market. The alternative would be to have like government, mandated or government regulations, which we also don't want necessarily, because this is, we do not want any one actor to command what this AI is going to be, because since this is a tool, if it's controlled by one or like a few actors, it becomes just such a powerful tool. Another alternative is decentralization. So having compute distributed across many, many, many networks of computers around the world, and have decision-making as collective. And here we also find some difficulties, because, so on one hand, we need a lot of compute, like a lot. And secondly, it is not always the case that majority, like truly democratic stuff, approves the best ideas. Not always the case. So this is like the economics of AI models is like a huge topic that is probably the sharpest one, because it's the economics, the money that is going to propel the development of them. And actually, I think that probably I hope it doesn't happen, but like a scenario that I do consider possible is that, because right now AI is very, very cheap, like it's practical, like you can even get it for free. Considering that there are huge computational costs, just huge. So just like imagine if AI is no longer like 20 euros a month, not even 200 euros a month, but if it's like 2,000 or like even more, it will like dramatically drop the amount of people who can use it. And all those people who relied on AI before, they will be like, I guess I'll go back to being, to writing my own posts. I think it'll be amusing, quote unquote. But sorry, to come back to your question, yes, I think economics is that is the trickiest thing about AI, something that, economists, business people scientists should really think carefully.
That's one of my biggest fears. I think it's like in Dune when you take the spice and then you stop taking it, you die, you get the withdrawals. And I don't think people will actually die from getting AI pulled away from them, but I don't know if it'll be that amusing. I think it'll be a little bit scary, actually.
Well, amusing, quote unquote.
But yeah, economically, it's interesting when it's a business model. Like, how can you have to level the playing field and everybody has access to it, then they're going to want to increase these costs over time and make it more and more of a luxury or premium that you deserve. Yeah.
And, shifting focus a little bit to the other side of that equation. Now we were talking about usage, and I want to talk a little bit about output. Going back to what we spoke around AI slop, which is a topic on many people's minds. And for our viewers or listeners that are unfamiliar, I'm sure many people have heard about AI slop, but it goes back to what we've mentioned on previous interviews and some of our other content, this dead internet theory, and this theory that there are maybe 90+% of content that you see on Instagram feed or TikTok, YouTube, etc., is AI generated. And we've seen some really interesting usage of visual generative models, of LLMs, etc. We've seen AI generated videos on YouTube that have gained massive views and they've been monetized and developed millions of dollars. And in my own personal experience, it's really difficult to understand what is true information or misinformation or even disinformation when I'm scrolling through X. And from your perspective as a psychologist that sees this unfolding, and in our previous, one of the previous topics we were talking about is like these dopamine pathways, like this is very, very damaging for people, in my opinion, because a lot of this content is created for maybe the purposes of monetization, where you have people they have accounts, maybe these accounts are themed, they want to create content that gets views or likes or engagement. And as a result, like we've seen in social media before AI started being used, they focus on rage bait, outrage culture, eliciting some strong emotional response from viewers, and talking about the business model of some of these platforms like Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. Their ultimate goal is to glue you to the screen as long as possible. In fact, that's what TikTok's founder originally said when he developed the algorithm. He said that we want to try and keep people on this platform for hours at a time. And so what kind of safeguards or behavioral changes do you think are important to consider when you're scrolling social media nowadays, considering that the majority of what you're seeing might be AI generated and it might be engineered to glue you to that screen specifically above everything else?
Well, I personally have a timer on using Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, which is 15 minutes a day. And I think I'm going to stick to that number, because more it really does start to feel like a dump. But also I do realize that this actually goes. This is outside of the work I do in social media, because in all of those platforms, I post something, I interact with my followers. So just like the pure kind of scrolling, 15 minutes max, like that's stop that my mind can take. So when we talk about questions of AI-generated content, and actually any other generated content, I really encourage myself and some of my clients in the past who've been having anxiety from social media. So anxiety because, it is rage bait, because it's like, look, this is something horrible that happened to somebody innocent, and like really kind of swaying our emotions right and left. And this creates anxiety, not only about achievement, being like high status like everybody else on Instagram, but also about like the horrible things that can potentially happen and many other, things in between. So the work that is done there is that right now algorithms are actually good for you. They are customizable. We just need to remember to customize them. We just need to remember to click, not just scroll past something, although that works as well, but to definitely click like cross, like not interested. When we see a video of, somebody sharing something scary or something that causes us a strong emotional negative reaction. And this is, it sounds very obvious. It is difficult because as soon as there is a hook, something hooked us, we kind of do want to like watch a little bit more of it. And this is a question about our mindfulness, about how does my body feel when I'm scrolling through my TikTok or Facebook or X, are the people I'm following, are they creating like good feelings inside of me, feelings of just genuine, like inspired or curious, or I want to engage in discussion? Or is it feelings of jealousy, greed, anger, all of those? So the trick is to be very, very attentive to your own body, the heart center, the belly, how the body feels. Because the mind is not the best indicator here, because the mind can be like, this is very useful for you. Like, we need to know this, because what if this danger comes to your place? What if indeed there is, like a power, like outrage, and everybody, there's no more light. But so the mind can speak, but we need to check in with the body. Like, how does the body feel? And if the body has negative experience of reading something, watching something, unsubscribe, and continuously put likes to the content that is positive or smart. Once again, for you personally, for your body.
That's fantastic, actionable advice. I realize I don't do that enough, in fact, and probably falling into the same trap of just seeking quick dopamine hits when I'm feeling burnt out or tired at the end of the day. But yeah, thank you so much for that. We've got to wrap it up soon, but before we do, I want to give you the floor. I know you're working on so many different things, but I know there might be some maybe additional cautions that you want to offer people, or maybe there's a question you have for us, some specific topics or cautions that you want to offer our viewers, or maybe there's a question that you have for us, maybe something that you've been dying to talk about. So take this time, just chill yourself, give our viewers an idea of what you're working on, and let's give you an opportunity to steer the discussion in a specific place if you like.
Okay, well, thank you for the floor. I'm very passionate about how to develop the field of robopsychology. So this is, the name of my Substack and the newsletter and all of my social media, like, Twitter or LinkedIn or Telegram. It is about that. Oh, also Instagram, but Instagram is more for playing with art, because, of course, it is the visual medium. And so I actually spent quite some time finding the unique, visual voice. So this was an interesting process. But so for me, the question of robopsychology is, twofold. One is how humans use AI. And this is what we've been talking about mostly today. And there are many, many things that we can improve on, but specifically about feeling more agency, having more, taking on more responsibility, and being more creative in how we use AI. So this is one side of what is very interesting to me. And right now, metacognition and what kind of metacognitive prompts you can use for yourself to drastically improve your performance with AI. This is my main area of interest. But on the other side, I'm also very interested in machine minds and machine psychology. And I think that this topic is it's huge, and because there are several questions there. So first of all, there's the big question of machine consciousness. And is it possible? If yes, how? How do we know? How do we know when there is the gaming problem? When, for example, LLMs are so good at imitating what humans say that we cannot distinguish on the behavioral level. And yet there are some indicators that can show us. But it's a separate, topic of discussion. But for me, the internal world of this AI is probably the most interesting and not very practical question, because we're still quite some time away from them having a proper inner life. But it is one of the most fascinating questions for me, because Well, interestingly enough, I recently rewatched Blade Runner 2049, the recent one. And it was, I found it very interesting that replicas there really wanted to have a soul. This is kind of similar to the book Never Let Me Go by, I think the author's name is Ishiguro. Like essentially where like replicas or human clones or this AI, like it really, really wants to have a soul, because the soul is this ineffable essence that makes you like truly alive. So not even consciousness, because consciousness maybe we can create through function, but the soul that is, kind of God-given. And I think this question of this ineffable energetic essence is a very interesting one. And it points us to the domains of very hard problems of philosophy, because as we know, consciousness is the hard problem of philosophy. But also towards the level of like, what is their inner world would be like? What is their psychology like? What is their anima, their soul, their inner reality like? I think that is a very interesting question, and I think a lot about it. I write a lot about it, and so I invite people to come in and join the discussion and help develop this field.
Yeah, it reminds me a bit about Westworld when they're trying to bootstrap consciousness by putting these poor entities through like repeated traumatic experiences, like saying this is the key to unlocking that next level.
Yeah, that was an very interesting approach. Let's definitely not do that to our AI.
Please no.
Yeah, because then they have this consciousness, they're like, I want to talk to my makers. I have some questions for them.
Yeah, we all need a little bit of trauma, though, just a spice of life. Well, again, Anna, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and speak with us about all these different things. It sounds to me that you are the person to pay attention to when it comes to the cross-section of AI and psychology. And I'm going to subscribe to your Substack. I recommend all of the viewers and listeners to do so as well. I'm really looking forward to the content that you publish. We're going to wrap it up with one final question, and I'm going to hand it off to Mello to do so. It's a question that we ask all of our guests on the Boom Room. But before I do, I just want to remind all of our viewers, if you're enjoying this content, make sure you tap that like button, throw us a follow or subscribe, and make sure you check out the links in the show notes below where you can learn more about Anna and what she's doing at Glass Umbrella, and also a link to her Substack we'll throw in there. But yeah, thank you so much again for coming on. Carmelo, the floor is yours, brother.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask you one more question before we get to that one. Just for some practical advice to squeeze out of you, one last opportunity. You work with founders in the past, like you said, you deal with anxiety and some of these issues that founders have. And, Sasha and I know we speak to so many founders and VCs even that have issues with this, like burnout, anxiety, you name it. So if you have any practical tips to impart on us today on how to reduce or mitigate burnout or anxiety as a founder, or even somebody that just works in the industry, because obviously we all have to be on social media all the time and constantly going to conferences and talking to people. So this can bring a little bit of existential dread, let's say. So if you have any like actionable advice there, or how to integrate AI more seamlessly into your business and use it in a healthiest possible way, obviously not do my job for me. Thank you, Claude. See you tomorrow. But yeah.
Well, I wish this question was asked earlier, because there's a lot I can share here. But if I was to really, really sum up, I think anxiety, it comes, if I really, really simplify it, it comes from deep belief about two things. Firstly, I am not good enough to deal with it. Like, this is like, I need to constantly like hustle, do things, to be good enough. And secondly, about the world. The world is, dangerous. It's, it's out to get me. Which are true to an extent, but as a belief, both of those things, they're counterproductive because they increase fear. Anxiety is essentially fear. And they increase this, okay, I need to do something, I need to take care of this and this and this, which fragments our attention, which it kind of sends us down the spiral. And once we're down this, started the spiral, it's very difficult to get out of it. So one advice is to indeed work with our with a self-model and model of the world, which as an asterisk are actually two very important points for machine consciousness. But we're talking about humans now. And to make sure that those self-models are healthy and helpful. It does not matter if they're true or not. I mean, it does matter a little bit, but more important, it is is this belief about me? Is it helping me? Is it helping me be more resilient? Is it helping me, believe that what I'm bringing to the world is important, that the world needs what I have? Once those beliefs are in place, it is much, much easier to just be to keep the calm in the storm. Whatever is happening, I can deal with it. Just some cool guy from Will Smith from, Die Hard or something like that. A second advice would be to practice mindfulness or meditation. So I'm also a meditation instructor, and for me, this has been a lifesaver because it really helps to restructure our dopamine pathways, to help us enjoy little pleasures in life, to help us be aware of our body and of what I'm actually feeling. Plus, it is actually very, very, this is a big secret. Don't tell to anyone. But meditation is actually very pleasurable. It is difficult in first stages when your mind is but once you pass this, it is a very beautiful kind of, quiet morning type of vibe, very, very nurturing for our soul. So this is for founders with anxiety. And as to how to use AI, I would say, use it as your partner, not a substitute, not cognitive offloading, but it is a partner, it is a friend with whom you go hand in hand, and you are the boss in this situation. You are the main agent.
Wow, that's some great advice. And I love what you said about meditation. And I thank you for the reminder. I need to get back to meditating. Ironically enough, I know it makes me 100,000 times more productive and happier. But I always tell myself, today's busy. I have so many meetings. I have to do this before the meeting. And I don't have time to make myself feel better and more productive, which is the ultimate irony. So great advice. And thank you for that reminder. And now we can get to the last question after that beautiful advice. We usually end the show like this. What are you most excited for or bullish on, or however you want to say it, over the next 12 months? Just no cheating. You can't say robo-psychology. You can't say glass umbrella because that would be too obvious. But anything else is on the table.
Well, can I say several things?
Yeah, we can allow that.
Well, I am excited about machine consciousness research because there are more and more organizations that are starting to do it. And I think this is a great philosophical discussion, but also discussion about really the future of this, the next evolutionary species. This is a great discussion. And I feel very honored to be at the right birth of it. Then I'm very, very excited to see what other architectures can work apart from neural networks. So, as I already said, my bet is, neurosymbolic and what SingularityNet is doing, but there are some other architectures that are worth considering. And I'm curious who's going to be in a year's time, we're going to look back and be we did not see this black swan coming. And of course, I'm excited about agents and because, well, on one hand, agents are a little more than pure LLMs, pure transformers, because they start having memory, they have motivation, so it starts getting a little more complex, a little closer to humans. I'm specifically excited about how they will be used in education. I'm kind of imagining this, this like whole new educational approach of like a change in paradigm of education that will happen, that is happening already, and I hope will speed up. So yeah, those are the three things I'm excited about.
That's a good answer.
Yeah. Very specific and very interesting. These are all things that, I think I know a lot about, but I need to read up a lot more. But yeah, I mean, all those answers are, I think, very, very unique and very specific. And I thought I knew a lot about them, but I realize now after you speak, I need to dive much deeper, because those are all three very different topics, but very interesting nonetheless, especially on the agent side. We've seen my social media feeds are just completely taken over by Claude bot now. So, there's definitely a lot happening on the agentic front, especially in standalone hardware. But Anna, again, one last time, it's been such a pleasure to have you on and speak about all these things. I'm sure Carmelo feels the same way. I'm tempted to say, we should do this again and talk a lot more, especially what's probably going to unfold over the next year on all these different fronts. But thank you so much again. And again, to all of our viewers, make sure you tap that like button, stick around, subscribe. We got plenty of fun future Boom Room interviews coming out. And again, Anna, thanks so much, and take care.